Okay, I'm gonna go through the CSC 200 exam here for you to take a look at instead of class on Tuesday morning. Let's see, what does it mean for C++ to be strongly typed and compiled? Strongly typed means that all variables must have the type of value they are created to hold established when defining the variable. Compiled means that the high-level code is translated into low-level code prior to runtime. This typically makes programs, say, faster, quotes. All right, so something along those lines. Decimal to binary, this dude right here, we're going to be able to copy it. There we go. All right, so this is the ones place, the twos place, fours, 8s, 16s, 32, 64s, 128. So we have a 128 plus 64, 32, 16 plus 8 plus 4 plus 1. That's a 157. Okay. 1328 decimal to hex. All right, so we're going to use the other pattern here. We're going to divide it by 16. 1328 divided by 16 is an 83 with a remainder of 0. 83 divided by 16 is a 5. 5 times 16 is an 80, so that's a remainder of 3. 5 divided by 16 is 0 with a remainder of 5. We read our answer from bottom up. So that's 530. Let's see, write the necessary code to display all the odd numbers between 1 and 100,000 to the screen. Okay, a couple different ways you can do it. You can just say, hey, I know the odd numbers are every other number. So I could say for int I is equal to 1, I is less than or equal to, actually, we'll just say I is less than 100,000. I plus plus, you know what? I'm gonna just do it the way I intended. So we have our loop. We're gonna ask a question. If I mod 2 is equal to 1, that means if it's an odd number. And what are we doing? We are displaying to the screen. So this will go through all the numbers between 1 and 100,000. Each time through, it'll ask the question, is it odd? If it's odd, it'll print it. Otherwise, it'll just skip it. You could have also done this without asking the question and adding 2 each time. How does C++ represent the following ways humans solve problems? Memory, asking questions, repetition. So memory is variables. Asking questions is conditionals, if statements, repetition is loops functions, you could say. But loops is the main obvious one. Write a function that takes a string as a parameter and returns the number of spaces in that string. All right, so it's going to return a number. So we're going to have a return value of int. We'll call this guy count spaces. It'll take a string as a parameter. We want to go through every element of this string. So we'll say for int I is equal to 0, I is less than s dot length, I plus plus. Each time through, we want to ask a question if the current character we're looking at is equivalent to a space. We want to increment some counter, so we're going to have a variable up here for keeping track of our count. So we'll say count plus plus. Down here at the bottom, after we've gone through the whole loop, asking about each character in the loop, and every single time we see a space, we increment count, we'll go ahead and return that count. Right, so it's a function, takes a string as a parameter, returns the number of spaces that are in that string, loop through the string, ask if it's a space. If it is, increment our counter. At the end, return that count. Write a function that takes a string as a parameter and prints every other character in the string to the screen. Okay, so again, this is printing something to the screen. So our return type will be void. Call this guy print chars. We'll have it take a string as a parameter. And we're going to go through every element of that string. So for int I is equal to 0, I is less than s dot length. And then we're going to say I is equal to I plus 2, because I want to deal with every other character. All right. And we can go ahead and put it all on one line if you want. So we'll say cout s at bucket I. And then we'll do our endl there at the bottom. So this will print out bucket 0, bucket 2, bucket 4, so on and so forth until you run out of characters in your string, printing out those characters on one line because we're not pressing enter here. And then I'll just kick it down a line here at the very end. What does the following code do? I is 0, J is 20, while J is greater than 0. So we're going to keep going as long as this variable holds a value that's greater than 0. So initially, is J greater than 0? It is, it's a 20. So we're going to print out 20 minus 0. So that's going to be a 20. And hit end. Then what are we doing in here? We have I plus plus, we have J minus minus. Notice though that these things are outside of this while loop. So we're not actually getting to these guys here. So up here, J is greater than 0. First it was 20. Is 20 greater than 0? Yes. Is so we'll print out 20. Then we spin back up. Is 20 still greater than 0? Yes. Prints out 20. So this just prints out 20 forever, right? Because these counters don't change as part of this while loop. So this is an infinite loop that prints 20 out forever. All right, because this while loop begins and ends with these opening and closing curly braces. We never actually get to the point where I changes and J changes. Question 9, write a function that takes two integers and returns the larger of the two integers. Okay, so it's a function. It's going to take two ints and return an int. So we'll say int find largest, int A, int B. So we'll take in those two parameters. So we'll say if A is greater than B, we'll return A. And you don't need the else here. You could just do a second return because return makes the function immediately end. But if you like the look of the else, that's fine. So it's going to return an int called find largest, takes two integers as parameters, A and B. If A is greater than B, it's going to return A because we're supposed to return the larger of the two integers. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and return B. You might ask, well, what if they're the same? Well, then it didn't matter which of the two numbers you returned. If both of them were 5, you returned a 5, which is the larger of the two values. I suppose you could make the argument that you could return a -1 or something like that if one of the values wasn't actually larger than the other one. But the intention was return the larger value or the other value if the first one wasn't larger. All right, lastly, what does the following function do when it's called? So we're going to take in two strings. We're returning an int. We've defined a value, an integer called val that starts off at 1. We're going to go through every character of the second string. I is 0, keep going as long as s2.length. Each time through, we're going to say val is equal to val times the first string's length. All right, so let's assume we have a string that has a length of 3 and a string that has a length of 5 here. This is going to go through 5 times. And what are we going to do? We're taking 3 to the 5th power is effectively what we're doing here in that example. So this returns a number that is s.length to the s2.length. Power. Do you want me to give an example? So if we have hello, which has a length of 5, and elephant that has a length of 8, this function would return 5 to the 8th power. Okay, because we're going through 8 times. Each time through, we're multiplying 5 times itself. All right, so that should be the exam. So I've taken the exam, and let's see. I guess I'll leave it at that. Remember, we will not be having class on Tuesday. I will be in Illinois, but I will not spend time in class on Thursday going over the exam. But if you do have some questions about the exam and want me to cover something, I'm happy to go over it in class question-wise, but I won't be spending class time doing the exam. This is the placeholder for that.